What's up everyone, and welcome to the channel. Before we get started, I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It really helps out the channel, and you won't miss any new horror content. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 deeply disturbing stories that were submitted by viewers who work night shifts. Now, if you've ever worked nights, you know there's something different about the world after midnight. The normal rules don't seem to apply. Most people are asleep, the streets are empty, and sometimes you encounter things that shouldn't exist. These 3 stories come from different parts of the country, Michigan, Texas, and Oregon, but they all share something in common. They happen to ordinary people doing their jobs, people who never expected to encounter the supernatural. Names and some details have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved, but I want to emphasize these events really happened. The people who experienced them are real, and their terror was real. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let me tell you about 3 night shift workers who learned that some jobs come with more than just overtime pay. Our first story comes from Sarah, a 24-year-old woman from Michigan. Sarah works as a night auditor at a mid-range hotel located just off Interstate 94. Now, for those that don't know, a night auditor is basically the person who runs the entire hotel by themselves during the overnight hours, checking in late arrivals, handling complaints, doing paperwork, and making sure nothing goes wrong while everyone else sleeps. Sarah had been working this job for about 8 months when this incident occurred. She told me that night audit work can be lonely, but the pay is decent and most nights are pretty quiet. Her shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and she'd gotten used to the routine. The hotel where Sarah worked wasn't fancy, but it wasn't a dump either. It was one of those places that caters to business travelers and families on road trips. Clean, affordable, nothing special. They had 86 rooms total, and during the week, they'd usually have maybe 20 to 30 rooms occupied. This particular incident happened on a Tuesday night in February. Sarah remembers it was especially cold that week, one of those Midwest winters where stepping outside feels like getting slapped in the face. The hotel was running about 15% capacity, which means they only had 12 rooms occupied out of 86. Sarah was at the front desk around 2:30 a.m., working on the night audit reports when the phone rang. Now, calls at that hour aren't unusual. Sometimes guests need extra towels, or they're locked out of their rooms, or they're complaining about noise from neighboring rooms. She picked up the phone with her standard greeting, "Front desk, this is Sarah." What she heard on the other end made her pause. Heavy breathing. Not like someone was trying to be creepy, more like someone who was genuinely distressed or had been running. Then, a man's voice, speaking very quietly, almost whispering, "Room 237 is making too much noise." Sarah immediately pulled up the hotel's computer system to check room 237. According to their records, that room had been vacant for 3 days. The last guest had checked out on Saturday morning, and housekeeping had cleaned it that same day. "I'm sorry, sir," Sarah said, "but that room is currently unoccupied. Are you sure about the room number? Maybe it's a neighboring room." The man's voice came back, still quiet but more insistent. "I can hear them moving furniture around up there. Heavy stuff. It's been going on for over an hour now." Sarah asked for his room number so she could follow up with him after investigating. The line went dead. Now, here's where things get strange. Sarah pulled up the phone logs on her computer. The hotel's phone system automatically records where calls come from, whether it's an outside line or an internal room phone. The call had come from room 237. Sarah stared at the screen for a moment, thinking there had to be a mistake. She ran the report again. Same result. The complaint about noise in room 237 had come from room 237's own phone. She grabbed the master key from behind the desk and decided to go check it out. Maybe someone had broken into the room, or maybe there was a maintenance issue she wasn't aware of. The second floor was completely silent as Sarah stepped off the elevator. The hallway was dimly lit by the emergency lighting, and she could hear the hum of the ice machine at the far end. She walked to room 237 and stood outside the door, listening. Nothing. Complete silence. She knocked on the door. Hotel security, is anyone in there? No response. Sarah used her master key to unlock the door. The moment she opened it, she was hit by a wave of cold air. Not just cool, genuinely cold, like someone had left a window open in the middle of winter. But this hotel's windows don't open. She flipped on the light switch and stepped inside. The room looked normal at first glance. Standard hotel room with 2 queen beds, a desk, a chair, and a small bathroom. But the temperature was wrong. Sarah estimated it had to be at least 20 degrees colder than the rest of the hotel. And there was a smell. Not a bad smell exactly, but distinctive. Stale cigarette smoke, which was weird because this was a non-smoking hotel and had been for years. But what really disturbed Sarah was the bed closest to the window. The covers were pulled back like someone had just gotten out of it moments before. And there was a clear indentation on the pillow, the kind you get when someone's head has been resting there for hours. Sarah knew, for a fact, that housekeeping had cleaned this room on Saturday. She'd seen the report. Fresh sheets, everything made up perfectly. No one had been assigned to this room since then. She was backing toward the door, starting to feel really uncomfortable when she heard it. A scraping noise coming from the bathroom. Slow and deliberate, like something heavy being dragged across the tile floor. Sarah didn't investigate. She ran, left the door wide open, and ran for the elevator, not caring about protocol or procedure. Her heart was pounding as she got back to the front desk. The rest of her shift passed without incident, but Sarah barely slept when she got home that morning. She kept thinking about that cold room and the sound from the bathroom. When her manager, Linda, arrived at 7 a.m., Sarah told her what had happened. Linda listened to the whole story without interrupting, then went upstairs to check room 237 herself. When Linda came back down 20 minutes later, she looked confused. She told Sarah that room 237 was exactly as housekeeping had left it. Bed made perfectly, normal temperature, no unusual smells. Like nothing had happened at all. But Linda was thorough. She decided to dig into the guest history for room 237, going back several years. What she found was disturbing. 3 years earlier, in March of 2019, a guest named Robert Hayes had died in room 237. Natural causes, he'd had a heart attack in his sleep. He was 54 years old, traveling for business, and his body wasn't discovered until housekeeping came to clean the room the next afternoon. But that wasn't the most unsettling part. Linda discovered that complaints about noise from room 237 had been logged about once a month for the past 3 years. Always late at night, always describing the sound of furniture being moved around. And every single complaint call had come from room 237's own phone line. The hotel's policy now is that room 237 is permanently out of order. They tell guests it's being renovated, but Sarah knows the truth. And sometimes, when she's working the night audit and the hotel is especially quiet, she can hear the elevator go to the second floor around 2:30 a.m. She never goes to investigate anymore. Our second story comes from Marcus, a 31-year-old security guard from Texas. Marcus has been working hospital security for 4 years, and he's seen a lot of things that would disturb most people. Hospitals, especially at night, can be strange places. There's always something happening, medical emergencies, distraught families, patients in pain. But Marcus told me that you develop a thick skin working in that environment. You learn to compartmentalize, to focus on your job, and not get emotionally involved in the suffering around you. The hospital where Marcus works is a large regional medical center with about 400 beds. It's a newer facility built mostly in the 1990s, but there's an older wing that dates back to the 1960s. This older section isn't used for patient care anymore. Mostly just storage, administrative offices, and some outdated equipment that's waiting to be disposed of. Marcus's shift runs from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and part of his duties include doing security rounds throughout the entire facility every 2 hours. Most of the time, these rounds are routine, checking doors, making sure equipment is secure, occasionally dealing with family members who are trying to visit outside of visiting hours. This incident happened on a Wednesday night in September of last year. Marcus was doing his 3:45 a.m. round, starting with the newer wings and finishing with the older section. The older wing is always eerily quiet. No patients, no staff, just empty hallways with fluorescent lights that flicker occasionally. Marcus was walking down the fourth-floor hallway of the old wing when he heard something that stopped him in his tracks. A child crying. Now, this was immediately concerning because the pediatric ward is on the complete opposite side of the hospital in one of the newer wings. There shouldn't have been any children in this section at all. Marcus followed the sound. It was coming from room 412, about halfway down the hall. As he got closer, he could see that the door was slightly ajar, and there was a faint light coming from inside. He knocked on the door frame and called out, "Security. Is everything okay in there?" The crying stopped immediately. Complete silence. Marcus pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was mostly empty, just some old medical equipment covered with white sheets, a few boxes of supplies, that kind of thing. But in the corner, there was something that made him pause. A small hospital bed, the kind they use for pediatric patients. And on the bed was a teddy bear that looked like it had been there for a very long time. Marcus was about to leave when he heard whispering behind him. He turned around quickly, but there was no one there. The room was empty except for the covered equipment and that small bed. But the whispering continued. A little girl's voice, very soft, saying the same thing over and over. "I want to go home. I want to go home. Please, I want to go home." Marcus is a big guy, 6'3", former military, but hearing that voice in that empty room made his blood run cold. He backed out of the room quickly and radioed the charge nurse on duty. "Hey, this is Marcus in security. Can you tell me about room 412 in the old wing? Is that space being used for anything?" The charge nurse, Patricia, responded immediately. "Room 412? That room has been sealed off for about 5 years now. We're supposed to be renovating that whole section, but the project keeps getting delayed." "Why?" Marcus didn't want to sound crazy, so he just said he heard some noise and wanted to make sure everything was secure. But Marcus couldn't let it go. The next day, after his shift ended, he went to the hospital's administrative office and asked to speak with someone about the history of room 412. The administrator he spoke with was reluctant to give him details, but eventually confirmed that there had been a tragic incident in that room several years ago, and that's why it had been taken out of service. Marcus pressed for more information and finally learned the truth. In March of 2018, a 7-year-old girl named Emma Rodriguez had been a patient in room 412. She was there for what should have been routine surgery, removal of her appendix. But there were unexpected complications during the operation. Emma died on the operating table. Her parents, devastated by the loss, had brought Emma's favorite teddy bear to the hospital to comfort her during her stay. It was a brown bear with a red ribbon around its neck that she'd had since she was a toddler. After Emma passed away, her parents couldn't bear to take the teddy bear home. They asked the hospital to donate it to another child who might need comfort during their stay. But somehow, the bear never got donated. When the hospital sealed off room 412 pending renovations, the teddy bear was just forgotten, left behind in the room where Emma had spent her final days. Marcus has done his security rounds probably 50 times since that night, and he says he always hears something when he passes room 412. Sometimes it's crying, sometimes it's whispering, and sometimes it's just the sound of small footsteps running around inside the room. He never opens that door anymore. He just walks past quickly and pretends he doesn't hear anything. But Marcus told me something else that really disturbed him. About 2 months after his encounter in room 412, he was talking with Patricia, the charge nurse, during a quiet moment on his shift. He mentioned that he sometimes heard sounds coming from that room, and Patricia got a strange look on her face. "You hear it too?" she asked. Patricia had been working at the hospital for over 15 years, and she told Marcus that several staff members had reported hearing a child crying in that section of the old wing. Always late at night, always coming from room. The hospital's official position is that these are just the normal sounds of an old building settling, or maybe pipes in the walls. But Patricia told Marcus that she'd known Emma Rodriguez. She'd been one of the nurses caring for her before the surgery. That little girl was so scared, Patricia said. She kept asking when she could go home. Even as they were wheeling her into surgery, she was asking if she could go home after. Marcus still works at the hospital. He still does his rounds in the old wing. But he walks past room 412 as quickly as possible, and he never, ever stops to listen. Because sometimes, late at night when the hospital is quiet, he swears he can still hear a little girl asking when she can go home.